They never tell you this at the beginning. They don't tell you that every towering life, every name carved into history, every fortune, every breakthrough, every revolution of thought, begins in a place so small it feels invisible. A place so ordinary it feels almost insulting. You are taught to chase significance, to be remarkable quickly, to stand out immediately. But the truth, the dangerous, liberating truth, is that greatness does not start with applause. It starts with silence. It starts with anonymity. It starts with the courage to be ordinary when the world is screaming for instant importance. Most people are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of being small, afraid of being unseen, afraid of beginning where no one is watching. And so they wait. They wait for confidence. They wait for clarity. They wait for permission. They wait for a sign that they are already special. But history does not wait. Thomas Edison was not the inventor when he began. He was a curious boy labeled difficult. Andrew Carnegie was not an industrial titan. He was a poor immigrant boy working 12-hour days. Abraham Lincoln was not a legend. He was a failed businessman, a defeated politician, a man who lost more elections than he won. Henry Ford was not a visionary. He was an experimenter who went bankrupt twice. None of them started extraordinary. They started ordinary, and they stayed committed long enough for ordinary to evolve into destiny. There is a quiet strength in beginning where you are, a rare bravery in accepting insignificance without surrendering ambition. Because when you stop trying to look important, you finally become dangerous. The world conditions you to believe that humility is weakness, that patience is delay, that obscurity is failure. But Napoleon Hill understood something most people never grasp. The soil of greatness is invisible. The roots grow in darkness long before the tree breaks the surface. The mind must be trained before it can command reality. Belief must be forged before results can follow. Discipline must exist before freedom can be earned. And all of that work, every ounce of it, happens when no one is applauding. This is the paradox. Those who crave attention too early sabotage their own power. Those who are willing to be overlooked gain an advantage few can touch. Because while others are performing, you are building. While others are comparing, you are refining. While others are chasing recognition, you are developing substance. The courage to be ordinary is not resignation. It is strategic humility. It is the willingness to say, I do not need to look successful today if it means I can become unstoppable tomorrow. Most people quit in the ordinary phase. They quit when progress feels slow. They quit when effort isn't rewarded immediately. They quit when the gap between who they are and who they want to be feels too wide. But that gap is not a curse. It is the training ground. Every discipline you admire was once awkward repetition. Every confidence you respect was once trembling uncertainty. Every decisive leader was once someone doubting their own voice. You do not leap into greatness. You grow into it. And growth demands humility, the humility to practice when you're bad, to learn when you're ignorant, to persist when you're unrecognized. This is where most egos collapse. The ego wants proof before effort. The ego wants rewards before work. The ego wants to be extraordinary without enduring ordinariness. But life does not negotiate with ego. Life responds only to alignment. Alignment between thought, belief, emotion, and action, repeated relentlessly over time. Napoleon Hill taught that definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. But what is rarely said is this: purpose does not announce itself with fireworks. It whispers. It tests. It asks whether you are willing to show up consistently without validation. Can you do the work when it feels meaningless? Can you remain disciplined when results are delayed? Can you believe in a future version of yourself that no one else can yet see? This is the quiet trial every great life must pass. And if you can pass it, if you can stand the discomfort of being ordinary while holding the vision of something extraordinary, then something begins to shift inside you. Your focus sharpens. Your excuses weaken. Your patience deepens. You stop rushing. You stop forcing. You stop begging life for evidence. You begin to move with certainty, not because success is guaranteed, but because quitting is no longer an option. This is where inner power is born, not in noise, not in attention, but in disciplined obscurity. And as long as you keep walking, step by step, thought by thought, habit by habit, the ordinary will not remain ordinary forever. It never does. There comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when the ordinary begins to reshape you. Not on the outside where others can see it, but on the inside where destiny is decided. This is the moment when repetition turns into rhythm, when effort stops feeling forced and starts feeling inevitable. You wake up differently. You listen differently. You think differently. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because your relationship with struggle changed. Most people believe confidence comes from success. But confidence is actually born in the hours when success is absent and you continue anyway. When you keep your word to yourself. When you do what you said you would do, even when motivation has evaporated. Especially then. This is where belief hardens into conviction. Napoleon Hill understood that the mind is either a servant or a saboteur. And the mind, left undisciplined, will always exaggerate effort and minimize progress. It will tell you that others are ahead, that time is running out, that your beginning is too small to matter. But the disciplined mind learns to measure progress differently. It measures progress by alignment, not applause. By consistency, not comparison. By inner order, not outer approval. When you stop asking, "Is this working yet?" and start asking, "Am I becoming who this requires me to be?" everything changes. Because results are delayed echoes of identity. What you do today is not designed to reward you today. It is designed to shape the person who will receive tomorrow. And that is why impatience is so costly. Impatience fractures purpose. Impatience tempts shortcuts. Impatience convinces you to abandon the process just before the process transforms you. Every great achiever learned to master waiting, not passive waiting, but active endurance. The kind of waiting where you prepare, refine, study, fail, adjust, and return stronger. The kind of waiting where you develop emotional control while the world tests your resolve. Lincoln waited through defeat and ridicule. Carnegie waited through exhaustion and obscurity. Edison waited through thousands of failed attempts that others would have called proof of incompetence. They did not wait because they were unsure. They waited because they were certain enough to endure delay. This is the difference between wishing and willing. Wishing demands immediate evidence. Willingness commits without guarantees. And willingness, sustained over time, is what bends reality. You see, the world does not reward potential. It rewards demonstrated persistence. It responds to those who refuse to withdraw their energy simply because outcomes have not yet materialized. This is why ordinary beginnings are so powerful. They strip you of illusion. They force you to rely on discipline instead of hype. They teach you to build internal stability before external expansion. And when stability forms inside you, chaos loses its power over you. You stop being emotionally reactive. You stop being easily discouraged. You stop being seduced by distractions that promise fast validation but steal long-term momentum. Your purpose becomes quieter, but stronger. Clarity does not arrive as a lightning bolt. It arrives as a slow narrowing. You eliminate what does not matter. You commit deeper to what does. Your vision sharpens not because life explained itself, but because you stayed long enough to understand it. This is where self-trust is forged. Self-trust is not arrogance. It is the calm assurance that no matter what happens, you will respond with discipline. That you will learn instead of collapse. Adjust instead of abandon. Persist instead of retreat. Most people never develop this trust because they quit before they prove themselves to themselves. And without self-trust, every obstacle feels personal. Every delay feels like rejection. Every failure feels final. But with self-trust, obstacles become information. Delays become preparation. Failures become refinement. This is the mindset shift that separates those who remain ordinary forever from those who use ordinariness as a launchpad. You begin to see struggle not as punishment, but as pressure shaping capacity. The way steel is strengthened by fire. The way muscles grow through resistance. The way vision matures through patience. You stop asking life to be fair. You start asking yourself to be disciplined. And discipline, quiet, uncelebrated, repetitive discipline, creates a kind of freedom that luck can never provide. Freedom from doubt. Freedom from external validation. Freedom from the need to rush your own evolution. Because now you understand something most never will: greatness is not an event. It is a process that rewards those who respect its timing. And timing is never rushed, it is honored. So you keep going. Not loudly. Not desperately, but deliberately. You honor the ordinary. You refine the basics. You master the fundamentals while others chase shortcuts. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you outgrow the room you once felt stuck inside. The work deepens. The vision expands. The mind steadies. You are no longer trying to become someone. You are becoming. And once that shift occurs, the ordinary can no longer contain you. At this stage, something subtle but irreversible has taken root. You no longer need constant reassurance. You no longer require the world to confirm what you already know in your bones. The hunger for approval fades, replaced by a deeper appetite, the need to honor your own standards. This is where discipline matures into identity. You are not trying anymore. You are living it. Your habits stop feeling like obligations and start feeling like expressions of who you are becoming. You don't negotiate with your principles. You don't bargain with your vision. You move forward whether the day feels heavy or light, because your commitment is no longer emotional, it is structural. Napoleon Hill spoke often of organized effort, but what he truly pointed toward was organized character. When your inner world is ordered, your outer world eventually follows. Chaos outside cannot overthrow discipline within. And now, when challenges arrive, and they always do, you meet them differently. You don't panic. You don't dramatize. You don't collapse into self-pity. You assess. You adapt. You continue. This is adaptability, not as weakness, but as intelligence. The rigid break. The flexible endure. Every great builder in history understood this. They bent without breaking. They adjusted strategy without surrendering purpose. Henry Ford changed designs, not his mission. Walt Disney lost studios, not belief. Edison changed methods, not commitment. They were not stubborn about form. They were relentless about direction. This is a crucial distinction. Ordinary minds cling to methods. Extraordinary minds commit to outcomes. And the courage to be ordinary teaches you this lesson early. Because when you start small, you are forced to learn. You cannot rely on reputation. You cannot hide behind past success. You must improve or disappear. So you learn. You study people who have walked before you. You absorb ideas, not to imitate, but to integrate. You refine your thinking, because you now understand that results are symptoms of thought patterns repeated over time. Ignorance becomes unacceptable, not because others will judge you, but because you demand more from yourself. This is intellectual discipline. You question assumptions. You challenge emotional reactions. You refuse to let old narratives dictate new possibilities. And as your thinking evolves, so does your resilience. Resilience is not toughness for show. It is the quiet capacity to absorb impact without losing direction. To be hit by disappointment and still move forward. To experience setbacks without allowing them to rewrite your self-concept. Most people allow temporary conditions to define permanent identity. One failure becomes, I am not capable. One delay becomes, it's not meant for me. One rejection becomes, I am not chosen. But the disciplined mind rejects these conclusions. It understands that conditions change, but principles endure. So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You ask, What is this shaping me into? That question changes everything. Because now adversity becomes an ally. Pressure becomes instruction. Resistance becomes confirmation that you are moving towards something that matters. This is when gratitude enters, not as forced positivity, but as clarity. Gratitude for the struggle because it reveals your strength. Gratitude for the delay because it protects you from premature success. Gratitude for the ordinary days because they are building extraordinary capacity. Gratitude grounds you. It keeps you from arrogance when progress accelerates and from despair when it slows. It reminds you that every stage has value, even when it lacks glamour. And here is the quiet miracle. While you've been focused on becoming, the world has been adjusting to you. Opportunities begin to notice your consistency. People begin to sense your stability. Circumstances begin to align, not magically, but logically. Because disciplined energy attracts responsibility. And responsibility, handled well, attracts influence. Influence is not given. It is earned through reliability. You are trusted because you are steady. You are respected because you are prepared. You are sought because you do not waver. This is how ordinary beginnings evolve into uncommon impact. Not through noise, not through self-promotion, but through alignment sustained over time. And even now, you remain grounded. Because you remember where this began, not with greatness, but with willingness. Not with confidence, but with commitment. Not with recognition, but with resolve. You understand that success is not a finish line. It is a responsibility to remain disciplined as expansion tests your character. And so you continue, calm, focused, intentional. Because you no longer fear being ordinary. You have mastered it. And mastery has prepared you for something far greater than attention. It has prepared you for permanence. Permanence is what few ever achieve. Not success that flashes and fades, not recognition that arrives loud and leaves quietly, but impact that endures, impact that reshapes lives, systems, and generations. And permanence is never built on spectacle. It is built on foundations laid patiently, invisibly, relentlessly. By now, you understand something essential. Greatness does not arrive to rescue you from who you are. It demands that you evolve into someone capable of carrying it. This is where many stumble. They ask for more opportunity without expanding capacity. They desire influence without strengthening integrity. They want results without responsibility. But life is precise. It gives only what you can hold. So before expansion comes consolidation. Before elevation comes grounding. Before visibility comes depth. And depth is forged in solitude. Not loneliness, but intentional solitude. Time spent thinking clearly, without noise. Time spent refining values. Time spent aligning actions with long-term vision rather than short-term relief. Napoleon Hill called this the mastery of self. And self-mastery is the rarest discipline of all. To govern your emotions when provoked. To govern your thoughts when tempted by doubt. To govern your actions when comfort whispers louder than purpose. This is the unseen battlefield. Outward success is easy compared to inner order. Anyone can look disciplined when watched. Few remain disciplined when no one is counting. But you do. You have learned to respect your own word. You have learned that moods are not mandates. You have learned that consistency outperforms intensity every time. And with this mastery comes calm. Not indifference, clarity. Not detachment, direction. You stop reacting to trends. You stop chasing approval. You stop measuring yourself against others' timelines. You move at the speed of alignment. This is where vision becomes steady instead of frantic. You no longer see the future as an escape from the present, but as a continuation of it. What you do today matters, not because it feels dramatic, but because it compounds. Compounding is invisible to the impatient. Small disciplines practiced daily. Minor improvements stacked consistently. Quiet decisions repeated faithfully. This is how ordinary lives become extraordinary legacies. The world celebrates breakthroughs but ignores accumulation. Yet accumulation is the true engine of transformation. One thought refined, one habit corrected, one principle honored, again and again. And now, when recognition finally arrives, it does not intoxicate you. Because you know it is not the cause of your strength, it is the result of it. You remain grounded because you remember the ordinary days, the unnoticed effort, the silence, the uncertainty, the moments when quitting would have been easier than continuing. Those memories keep you honest. They remind you that arrogance is the enemy of endurance, that entitlement corrodes discipline, that forgetting your roots weakens your future. So you lead differently. If you lead others, you do not intimidate, you stabilize. If you influence, you do not impress, you empower. If you succeed, you do not dominate, you elevate. Because you know what it costs to grow. And you respect that cost in others. This is the mark of true greatness. It multiplies strength instead of hoarding it. And still, you remain adaptable. You understand that no era stays fixed. That methods must evolve. That learning never ends. You remain a student, not out of insecurity, but out of respect for reality. Stagnation is disguised as confidence. Growth requires humility. So you stay curious. You listen more than you speak. You refine more than you announce. And through this, your relevance endures. Time does not erase you, it reveals you. Because what you have built is not dependent on trends, platforms, or applause. It is anchored in principles that do not expire. Discipline, clarity, purpose, resilience. These do not age. They compound. And now, when you look back, not with regret, but with understanding, you see that the courage to be ordinary was never about settling. It was about preparation. Preparation for responsibility. Preparation for influence. Preparation for a life that could withstand pressure without losing direction. You were willing to start small so you could finish strong. You were willing to be unseen so you could become undeniable. You were willing to be ordinary so you could become timeless. This is the quiet triumph few ever speak of. Not the applause, not the status, but the inner certainty that you honored your potential instead of betraying it. And as you continue forward, still disciplined, still learning, still grounded, you no longer chase greatness. You embody it, because greatness was never something waiting outside you. It was something waiting to be earned, patiently, humbly, relentlessly, through the courage to begin where you were, and the resolve to never stop becoming. And even now, there is no sense of arrival, only alignment. No dramatic finish line, only forward motion guided by principle. Because you have learned the final lesson that ordinariness was always trying to teach you. Life is not conquered in moments, it is shaped in patterns. You no longer chase intensity. You cultivate rhythm. You no longer depend on inspiration. You rely on structure. You no longer fear obscurity. You understand its purpose. This understanding gives you a rare stillness. A stillness that cannot be shaken by noise, nor seduced by distraction. When the world rushes, you remain deliberate. When others panic, you remain composed. When outcomes fluctuate, your identity does not. That is power. Not loud power. Not dominating power. But rooted power. The kind that endures seasons. The kind that survives loss. The kind that continues even when conditions turn hostile. Napoleon Hill believed that every human being carries within them a dormant force, waiting to be activated by desire disciplined by purpose. You now know that desire alone is insufficient. Desire must be trained, directed, tempered by patience and reinforced by habit. You did not become strong by avoiding hardship. You became strong by integrating it. Each disappointment refined your expectations. Each failure sharpened your judgment. Each ordinary day strengthened your endurance. And now, when others look at your life and call it overnight success, you do not correct them. You smile, not with pride, but with understanding. Because you know what they cannot see. They cannot see the mornings when you moved without motivation. They cannot see the nights when doubt tested your resolve. They cannot see the years when progress whispered instead of shouted. But you remember. And memory keeps you grounded. It reminds you that nothing worth sustaining is built quickly. That anything rushed is fragile. That depth requires time. And time rewards those who respect it. So you continue to live by fundamentals. You guard your mind. You choose your thoughts carefully. You refuse to entertain narratives that weaken discipline or excuse stagnation. You act with intention. You speak with precision. You commit fully, without drama. This is not a performance. This is a standard. And standards, once internalized, govern behavior effortlessly. Now, when the next challenge appears, you do not ask whether you can handle it. You ask how it will expand you. When uncertainty arises, you do not retreat, you refine. When pressure increases, you do not resist, you stabilize. Because you understand that pressure does not create character. It reveals it. And yours was forged in ordinariness. In the unglamorous repetition. In the quiet self-correction. In the long obedience to a meaningful direction. This is why you do not envy shortcuts. You have seen where they lead. You have seen how fast success without structure collapses under weight it cannot carry. You chose differently. You chose the slower path, the deeper path, the path that required faith before evidence. And in choosing it, you became someone who does not need to prove themselves, because they are built to endure, built to adapt, built to lead without losing themselves. This is the legacy of the courage to be ordinary. Not that you remained small, but that you allowed yourself to grow properly, that you respected the seasons of development, that you did not rush past the very experiences that shaped your strength. And now, as you move forward, still unfinished, still evolving, you carry this truth with you. Greatness does not demand that you start exceptional. It demands that you remain faithful. Faithful to your discipline. Faithful to your vision. Faithful to the work when it is unseen. Because in the end, history is not shaped by those who sought importance. It is shaped by those who were willing to begin unnoticed, and had the courage to persist until the world had no choice but to notice. And you know now, insignificance was never your enemy. It was your training ground. And when you finally understand this, fully, deeply, without resistance, you stop asking life to make you feel important. You no longer need symbols, titles, or applause to confirm your worth. Because worth, you now know, was never granted from the outside. It was constructed internally, decision by decision, long before anyone was watching. This is liberation. Liberation from comparison. Liberation from urgency. Liberation from the exhausting need to prove. You are no longer in competition with others. You are in alignment with yourself. And alignment is a force stronger than ambition alone. Ambition can burn out. Alignment endures. You move with quiet certainty now. When setbacks arrive, they no longer threaten your identity. When success arrives, it no longer inflates your ego. Both are temporary. You are not. What remains constant is your commitment to principle. You understand that the mind must be guarded daily, because thoughts become habits, habits become character, and character becomes destiny. You refuse to let resentment take root. You refuse to let fear dictate decisions. You refuse to let comfort erode discipline. Because you have seen the cost of neglect. You have seen talented people undone by impatience. Gifted people weakened by inconsistency. Promising lives derailed by the refusal to endure the ordinary. And you chose differently. You chose restraint over impulse. Depth over display. Mastery over momentum without direction. This choice reshaped you. It taught you that courage is not always loud. Sometimes courage is showing up again, quietly, after yesterday brought no reward. Sometimes courage is continuing when doubt is logical and quitting would be justified. Sometimes courage is staying ordinary long enough for the extraordinary to emerge naturally. This is why your presence now carries weight. Not because you demand attention, but because you are centered. People sense it. Stability is rare. Clarity is magnetic. Discipline is unmistakable. You are not trying to inspire. You are embodying what inspires. And embodiment is the highest form of influence. You no longer chase meaning. You create it through action aligned with purpose. Each day becomes an expression of values, not a reaction to circumstances. You do not wait for motivation. You act and motivation follows. Because motion clarifies the mind. You understand now that the greatest deception was never failure. It was the belief that you needed to be exceptional at the beginning. That myth kept millions frozen, afraid to start because their start would be small. But small was never the problem. Inconsistency was. Ego was. Impatience was. And once those were stripped away, what remained was unstoppable. A mind trained to persist. A character trained to endure. A vision trained to outlast delay. This is what Napoleon Hill was pointing toward all along. Not fantasy, not blind optimism, but disciplined faith. Faith backed by action. Faith reinforced by habit. Faith that does not require constant reassurance. You did not bypass the ordinary. You honored it. You allowed it to temper you, humble you, strengthen you, and prepare you. You stayed when others left. You learned when others complained. You built when others performed. And because of that, your greatness is not fragile. It does not depend on trends. It does not collapse under pressure. It does not vanish when conditions change. It stands quietly, firmly, unshaken. This is the final truth, the one few are ever ready to accept. Greatness does not begin with confidence. It begins with commitment. It does not begin with recognition. It begins with responsibility. It does not begin with being extraordinary. It begins with the courage to be ordinary, and the discipline to remain faithful until ordinary is transformed. And now, wherever you are, unknown or acknowledged, early or deep in the journey, know this. You are not behind. You are not unworthy. You are not insignificant. You are in training. And if you continue, steadily, humbly, relentlessly, the world will one day look at what you've built and call it remarkable. But you will know the truth. It was built in silence. It was earned in obscurity. It was forged in the courage to begin small and never stop becoming. And even as those words settle, there is no final curtain, no dramatic pause where life declares the work complete. Because the kind of life you are building does not end in a speech. It continues in action. Quiet action. Daily action. Faithful action. You now understand that the greatest danger was never being ordinary, it was abandoning the process too soon. It was mistaking discomfort for disqualification. It was assuming that slow progress meant wrong direction. But direction was never wrong. Only patience was being tested. So you learned to stay. You stayed when the results were inconsistent. You stayed when doubt made logical arguments. You stayed when no one noticed the effort you were making. And staying changed you. It refined your judgment. It strengthened your emotional control. It taught you to separate temporary feelings from permanent decisions. This is rare maturity. Most people are governed by emotion. They move when they feel good, stop when they feel tired, retreat when they feel uncertain. But you learn something deeper. Feelings are weather, not climate. They pass. Principles remain. And so you anchored yourself to principle. You chose to do the work regardless of mood. You chose to think clearly regardless of noise. You chose to act responsibly regardless of recognition. Responsibility, this is where true power resides. Responsibility for your thoughts. Responsibility for your habits. Responsibility for your future. Not blaming circumstances. Not waiting for rescue. Not outsourcing your destiny. Napoleon Hill understood that self-reliance is not isolation, it is ownership. Ownership of the inner world that eventually commands the outer one. And now, when others hesitate, you decide. When others complain, you adjust. When others wait, you move. Not recklessly, Not impulsively, but deliberately. Because you no longer confuse speed with progress. Progress is alignment sustained over time. You also understand that greatness does not demand perfection. It demands honesty. Honesty about weaknesses. Honesty about blind spots. Honesty about where growth is still required. So you continue to refine. You refine how you think under pressure. You refine how you speak under stress. You refine how you respond when outcomes do not match expectations. Refinement is the lifelong discipline of those who endure. And endurance is what separates those who rise once from those who remain relevant. This is why you no longer fear setbacks. They do not define you. They inform you. They show you where structure needs strengthening, where skill needs sharpening, where humility needs renewing. You accept correction without resentment. You accept challenge without collapse. You accept responsibility without excuse. Because now you understand, life is not trying to defeat you. It is trying to develop you. And development is rarely comfortable. It stretches identity. It tests patience. It demands sacrifice. But sacrifice, willingly chosen, becomes investment. You invested time when others spent it. You invested focus when others scattered it. You invested discipline when others relied on hope alone. And investments compound. Slowly, quietly, relentlessly. This is why your future is not fragile. It is built on habits that do not depend on circumstances. On values that do not bend under pressure. On discipline that does not disappear when motivation fades. You are no longer asking whether greatness is possible. You are asking how deeply you are willing to honor it. Because now you see it clearly, greatness is not something you chase. It is something you practice. Every day you choose focus over distraction. Every day you choose responsibility over comfort. Every day you choose progress over performance. And these choices, repeated without drama, without applause, without shortcuts, shape a life that cannot be shaken. This is the quiet confidence of someone who has been forged, not fantasized. Someone who understands that beginnings are humble, paths are long, and purpose is proven through consistency. So you continue, not rushing, not hesitating. Grounded, disciplined. Because you no longer need to become extraordinary. You are simply committed to never betraying the work that ordinariness began. And that commitment, held long enough, always finishes what it starts. And so the days keep coming, plain, demanding, unremarkable on the surface, and you meet them without resistance. You no longer ask each day to impress you. You ask it to shape you. That single shift changes everything. You understand now that life is not a series of highlights. It is a discipline of continuity. Showing up when it matters. Thinking clearly when it's easier not to. Choosing long-term strength over short-term relief. This is the quiet code you live by. You no longer romanticize struggle, but you respect it. You know that comfort unchecked weakens character, and ease without structure erodes clarity. So you don't avoid difficulty, you engage it intelligently. You extract its lesson, integrate its pressure, and move forward refined, not bitter. Bitterness belongs to those who expected life to be gentle. Strength belongs to those who understood life to be formative. And formation takes time. You stop rushing the process because you finally see what rushing destroys. Judgment. Emotional control. You've seen how fast success without internal order collapses into confusion. You've seen how recognition without self-mastery breeds anxiety instead of confidence. You wanted something different. You wanted stability before scale. Substance before status. Roots before reach. And because of that choice, your mind has become a place of order instead of noise. You no longer host every thought that knocks. You evaluate. You discard what weakens you. You cultivate what strengthens you. This is mental sovereignty. You are not ruled by impulse. You are not hijacked by fear. You are not dragged by comparison. You decide what deserves your attention. And attention, once disciplined, becomes a weapon. A weapon against distraction, against doubt, against the subtle erosion of purpose that destroys more lives than failure ever could. You protect your energy now. You understand that energy spent reacting is energy stolen from creating. So you simplify. You reduce excess. You focus on what moves the needle rather than what feeds the ego. Clarity sharpens you. You begin to see how many people are busy but directionless, informed but undisciplined, ambitious but ungrounded. You don't judge them, you recognize them. You were once tempted by the same noise. But ordinariness taught you restraint. It taught you that less done well is more powerful than more done poorly. That mastery of fundamentals outperforms endless experimentation without commitment. That consistency makes talent inevitable. And now, when opportunity expands, and it will, you don't rush to grab everything. You choose carefully. You accept responsibility only where your standards can be upheld. Because you understand something most never learn. Growth that exceeds character becomes collapse. So you expand at the speed of integrity. You do not compromise values to accelerate results. You do not abandon structure to chase momentum. You do not trade long-term respect for short-term applause. This discipline makes you rare. And rarity creates gravity. People begin to trust you, not because you promise, but because you deliver. Not because you speak loudly, but because you remain consistent. Reliability becomes your reputation. And reputation built on discipline cannot be faked. You carry yourself differently now, not with arrogance, but with calm authority. You don't rush conversations. You don't over-explain. You don't seek validation in agreement. You stand firmly because you are anchored internally. This is the reward of enduring the ordinary. Not fame, not constant excitement, but inner solidity. The kind that allows you to face uncertainty without panic. The kind that allows you to face success without losing yourself. The kind that allows you to keep building when others stop. And still, you remain a student. Because the moment you believe you've arrived, growth stops. You stay curious. You stay humble. You stay open to refinement. Not because you doubt yourself, but because you respect reality. Reality always has more to teach. So you listen. You observe. You adjust. You understand now that becoming is lifelong. That every level introduces new tests. That every expansion demands deeper discipline. And you welcome it. Because you are no longer afraid of what it will require. Ordinariness already trained you for this. It taught you patience. It taught you resilience. It taught you how to keep moving when progress is quiet. And that is why, no matter where this path leads, you will endure. Because the courage to be ordinary did not make you smaller. It made you unshakable. And unshakable does not mean unmoved. It means centered. It means that when the ground shifts, as it always does, you adjust your stance without losing your balance. You have learned that life is not stable, but you can be. This is the final refinement. You no longer resist change. You no longer fear uncertainty. You no longer cling to identities that have expired. Because ordinariness taught you how to let go. It taught you that growth requires shedding old habits, outdated beliefs, roles that once served you but no longer fit. You learned that holding on too tightly is just another form of fear. So you release without bitterness. You move forward without nostalgia. You understand now, the past is not a place to live. It is a place to learn from. And learning keeps you light. Light enough to adapt. Light enough to evolve. Light enough to carry responsibility without being crushed by it. You stop asking life to repeat itself. You ask yourself to rise to what is next. This is where wisdom replaces ambition. Ambition asks, how far can I go? Wisdom asks, what must I become to sustain it? And sustainability has become your measure. You choose actions you can repeat, standards you can maintain, values you can live with when no one is watching. Because you know that character is revealed not in crisis alone, but in comfort. In what you do when discipline is optional. in how you treat the ordinary moments once the extraordinary becomes familiar. You remain vigilant, not paranoid, aware that comfort dulls edges, aware that success invites complacency, aware that the mind must be trained continuously or it will drift. So you keep returning to fundamentals. You sharpen your thinking. You simplify your life. You recommit to the work that built you. Over and over again. This is why your strength does not fade with time. It deepens. It becomes less visible but more reliable. Less dramatic but more decisive. You have become someone who does not need to announce progress. Progress announces itself. In how you respond under pressure. In how you choose under temptation. In how you lead without force. This is influence without noise. Power without aggression. Confidence without performance. And now, if someone were to ask you the secret, how greatness truly begins, you would not give them a technique. You would not give them a shortcut. You would give them the truth most are unwilling to hear. That greatness begins the moment you stop waiting to feel special. The moment you stop demanding proof before effort. The moment you accept being ordinary and commit anyway. Because that commitment changes everything. It changes how you think when results are slow. It changes how you act when no one is watching. It changes how you endure when quitting would be easier. And endurance, quiet, disciplined, patient endurance, is the rarest skill of all. You have it now. Not because you were born with it, but because you earned it, day by day, choice by choice, through the humility to start small and the courage to continue. So wherever you stand now, at the beginning, in the middle, or deep into the climb, remember this. The ordinary is not the enemy. It is the doorway. Walk through it with discipline. Stand in it with patience. Honor it with consistency. And one day, without announcement, without spectacle, without sudden transformation, you will look at the life you've built and realize it is no longer ordinary at all. It is solid. It is intentional. It is earned. And it will last, because it was forged not in fantasy, but in the quiet, relentless courage to be ordinary and never stop becoming. And as you stand in that realization, something profound settles within you. The world cannot define your value, because you have already defined it yourself. You no longer measure your worth in applause, in recognition, in fleeting trends. You measure it in fidelity, fidelity to the work, fidelity to the process, fidelity to the standards you set when no one was watching. This is true power, invisible, unshakable, eternal. You begin to see life differently. Every challenge is a teacher disguised as an obstacle. Every delay is a mentor disguised as frustration. Every criticism is a mirror reflecting what requires refinement, not condemnation, not defeat. You engage life proactively, intentionally, rather than reactively, defensively, or desperately. This is mastery. And mastery is quiet. It does not seek attention. It does not boast. It does not plead for validation. It simply exists, resolute, steadfast, and inevitably transformative. You no longer seek shortcuts to significance. You honor the path because you understand that shortcuts carry fragility, and fragility cannot sustain greatness. You realize that ordinary moments are where extraordinary lives are forged. The early mornings before anyone rises, the late nights when only your effort remains, the repetition that feels monotonous, these are your proving grounds. These are the crucibles in which your capacity is strengthened, your judgment refined, your discipline anchored. And with each ordinary day endured and mastered, the extraordinary slowly emerges, not as spectacle, but as substance. You see it in the clarity of your decisions, in the reliability of your habits, in the calm assurance that you can withstand whatever comes. You understand that fame, recognition, and wealth are secondary. They are simply side effects of a life well constructed, a mind well trained, and a character well tempered. Now your vision is different. It is no longer a distant dream that teeters on hope. It is a living blueprint. It is actionable. It is inevitable. You move through the world guided not by fear of insignificance, but by the conviction that what you build in obscurity today will shape reality tomorrow. And you act accordingly. You do not waste energy on trivialities. You do not surrender to distraction. You do not allow impatience to derail progress. Every thought is deliberate. Every action is purposeful. Every decision is weighed against the long game rather than the immediate payoff. This is the discipline of ordinariness transformed into power. The courage to be ordinary is, in truth, the courage to confront reality unflinchingly. To accept where you are without denial, to start where you are without excuses, and to keep moving forward with relentless consistency. Every great life you admire, every Edison, every Carnegie, every Lincoln, every Ford, understood this. They did not begin extraordinary. They began ordinary, and they remained faithful to the process long enough for ordinary to become remarkable. And now, having walked that path yourself, you know that it is not about rushing, not about forcing, not about seeking approval. It is about commitment, patience, and trust in the invisible process of growth. The courage to endure the unseen work is, in itself, the foundation of greatness. So you continue, not with the desperation of the impatient, not with the arrogance of the untested, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that mastery is forged in the ordinary, and greatness is earned in the patient pursuit of alignment, discipline, and purpose. And in this continued dedication, you become a force that is no longer contingent on circumstances. You are resilient, adaptable, disciplined, and wise. You carry within you the power to shape your future not through luck, not through external validation, but through the accumulation of consistent, principled action. This is the legacy of the ordinary embraced, the life patiently constructed, the soul quietly refined, the mind endlessly disciplined. And in this legacy, you realize at last, greatness does not start with extraordinary talent, explosive opportunity, or immediate recognition. It starts with the courage to be ordinary, and the unwavering commitment to remain faithful to that ordinariness until it transforms into something unshakable, enduring, and remarkable. You began unseen, unheard, uncelebrated it, and through patience, discipline, and resilience, you will endure. You will rise. You will inspire, not because you demanded it, but because you became worthy of it. And the world will notice, not the beginnings, not the struggle, not the smallness, but the extraordinary life that grew quietly, persistently, invisibly, from the courage to remain ordinary. This is the truth. This is the law. And this is your path. Because all greatness, every lasting achievement, begins with insignificance. And you have the courage to start there. And now, with that courage deeply ingrained, you see the world differently. You notice the invisible patterns, the subtle opportunities, the quiet ways effort compounds over time. While others chase recognition, you chase refinement. While others are distracted by fleeting rewards, you are captivated by enduring growth. You understand that life's true measure is not in applause, but in capacity. Not in visibility, but in resilience. Not in speed, but in alignment. And alignment, the harmony of thought, action, and purpose, is the invisible engine that powers every extraordinary life. Every morning, you wake not seeking instant validation, but seeking integrity in your actions. You do what must be done, even when unseen, even when tedious, even when easy to postpone. Because you know that these small, disciplined choices are the mortar that cements your legacy. Napoleon Hill's words echo in your mind. Strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle. You have lived this. You have endured it. And in enduring, you have discovered a secret that eludes the impatient, the distracted, the ego-driven. Greatness is not in the moment. It is in the cumulative impact of ordinary moments lived extraordinarily well. You no longer fear insignificance. You embrace it. You understand that the ordinary is not a limitation. It is a training ground. It is where patience, resilience, and discipline are forged. It is where the foundation of unshakable character is built. And with that foundation, nothing in the world can destabilize you. You see the truth in every failure. It is a lesson. Every delay, it is a refinement. Every disappointment, it is a shaping force. The world cannot grant you greatness. It can only test you. And through repeated testing, through persistent endurance, you cultivate the strength that becomes impervious to circumstance. Now, when opportunity arrives, you are ready, not desperate, not anxious, not distracted. You are ready because you have been building the capacity to handle it. You are ready because your character, your habits, and your vision have been strengthened in the crucible of ordinariness. You are ready because the work has already been done, quietly, persistently, without fanfare. This is why ordinary beginnings are sacred. They teach humility. They teach patience. They teach the irreplaceable value of consistency. They show you that the road to greatness is not a leap. It is a series of deliberate steps, each one building on the last, each one preparing you for the next. And in this understanding, you find freedom. Freedom from comparison. Freedom from envy. Freedom from the anxiety of needing to impress. Freedom from the delusion that instant recognition defines worth. You move with calm certainty, knowing that the results of your effort are inevitable if you continue faithfully. You have become someone who no longer waits for permission from the world. You have become someone who grants yourself authority over your own growth. Someone who understands that the courage to start small, the courage to endure obscurity, and the courage to remain disciplined is the true measure of greatness. And this courage, it is now a part of you. It cannot be taken. It cannot be diminished. It is forged into your habits, your character, your mind. It is the invisible force that carries you through uncertainty, over obstacles, and beyond the limitations most accept as permanent. So you move forward, steadfast, patient, disciplined, and unshakable. You do not chase fame or fortune. You chase mastery. You chase alignment. You chase the integrity of a life lived fully, deeply, intentionally. And one day, as the world watches in awe, you will not be surprised by the recognition, because you will have long known that greatness was never outside you. It was within you all along, built quietly in the ordinary, strengthened in the unseen, perfected through the courage to endure, and realized in the unwavering commitment to never stop becoming. The courage to be ordinary is not a compromise. It is the beginning of everything extraordinary. And now, having walked this path, you understand. To start small, to endure in obscurity, to honor discipline over desire, to value depth over speed, that is the truest form of courage. That is the foundation of lasting achievement. That is the path of every life that leaves a mark long after the noise fades. You have the courage. You have the commitment. You have the vision. And from here, the ordinary transforms. From here, the ordinary becomes unstoppable. From here, the ordinary becomes legendary. Because all greatness begins in silence, and you were willing to listen. And now, nothing can stop what has been quietly forged within you. And in that silence, you realize something extraordinary. The world will never fully understand your journey. Few will notice the hours, the discipline, the invisible battles fought in solitude. Few will see the countless small choices that compounded into strength. And that is exactly as it should be. Because what is built in obscurity does not require approval. It demands endurance. You understand now that significance is not given. It is grown. It is cultivated in the quiet, repeated acts of courage. It is earned in the shadows where no one applauds, and the rewards appear long after the effort is invested. Edison's thousands of failed experiments were not seen as progress in his time, but in truth, each failure was a brick in the foundation of brilliance. Carnegie's long days of obscurity were the training ground for the industrial empire he would eventually command. Lincoln's defeats were the crucible for the wisdom and patience that would save a nation. And like them, You have learned to honor the invisible work. You no longer measure success by immediate recognition, but by the fidelity to your principles, by the refinement of your mind, by the resilience of your character, by the steady growth of your capacity to endure, adapt, and continue when it would be easier to quit. The courage to be ordinary is a quiet revolution. It does not roar, it does not demand attention, it does not seek validation. Instead, it transforms the person willing to embrace it. It molds patience into persistence, fear into focus, doubt into discipline, and obscurity into influence. You have become someone who is no longer distracted by the fleeting applause of others. You are focused on the lasting impact of your own actions. You do not measure your worth by comparison. You do not chase the spotlight. You understand that the light of your life shines brightest when it is fueled by integrity, sustained by discipline, and guided by purpose. And with this understanding, you become unstoppable. Not because the world bends to you, but because you have aligned yourself with the unshakable principles of growth. Not because fortune favors you, but because you have cultivated the character capable of enduring fortune and misfortune alike. Not because you are extraordinary at the start, but because you remained faithful through the ordinary, and ordinary is the true test of strength. This is the final transformation. The ordinary mind, disciplined and patient, becomes extraordinary not through speed or spectacle, but through unyielding commitment. It becomes enduring not through shortcuts, but through repetition. It becomes powerful not by seeking approval, but by honoring purpose. And now, as you look forward, you see a life defined not by immediate rewards, not by recognition, not by circumstance, but by your own courage, your own discipline, and your own relentless commitment to growth. You see the truth that Napoleon Hill always taught, that the seeds of greatness lie not in the spectacular, but in the ordinary, tended daily, nurtured patiently, and cultivated with unwavering resolve. You began unnoticed. You endured unnoticed. You persisted unnoticed. And yet, in that patience, in that faithfulness, in that courage to remain ordinary, you have become extraordinary. Because all greatness begins in silence. All strength begins in patience. All legacy begins in the courage to be ordinary. And you have had that courage. You have lived it. You have embodied it. And nothing, no circumstance, no setback, no opinion, no fear, can ever undo it. The ordinary is your foundation. The ordinary is your power. The ordinary is your triumph. And from this ordinary beginning, everything extraordinary will rise. And now, standing in the fullness of this understanding, you feel a quiet clarity that the world cannot take away. You realize that life does not demand perfection. It demands presence. It does not reward impulse. It rewards consistency. It does not celebrate the loud. It honors the persistent, the disciplined, the patient, and the committed. Every day becomes an opportunity, not for spectacle, but for refinement. Every challenge becomes a teacher, not for despair, but for wisdom. Every setback becomes an invitation, not to quit, but to grow. And in this rhythm, ordinary moments become the forge of extraordinary destiny. You see it clearly now, greatness is not an accident. It is not inherited. It is not handed to those who appear ready. It is cultivated patiently, relentlessly, invisibly, in the lives of those willing to endure the small beginnings, the quiet hours, the unseen labor. Edison's brilliance, Carnegie's empire, Lincoln's leadership, all of it was built in ordinary circumstances by ordinary people with extraordinary discipline. And you are no different. The courage to be ordinary is not a temporary choice. It is a lifelong posture. It is the framework through which you navigate every decision, every moment, every challenge. It teaches you to be steady when others panic, to be disciplined when others falter, to remain faithful when results are delayed. In this steadiness, power grows. Not the flash of talent, not the roar of recognition, but the quiet, unstoppable force that moves mountains because it is rooted in unshakable character. You understand now that external conditions are irrelevant. What matters is internal alignment. What matters is the relentless cultivation of mind, body, and spirit in harmony with purpose. You move forward with deliberate intent. Every action, every thought, every choice is measured against the standard you have set. You no longer allow distraction to steal your focus, impatience to rob your peace, or doubt to derail your progress. You are committed to the process because you understand that the process is what transforms ordinary beginnings into extraordinary outcomes. And with this, you become a lighthouse in a storm, not by seeking attention, but by radiating calm, clarity, and consistent strength. People are drawn to you, not because you demand it, but because you have cultivated a presence that commands respect silently. Influence flows naturally to those who embody it, and you embody it through the courage to persist where others would give up. This is the quiet triumph of the ordinary embraced, that what begins small, unnoticed, and uncelebrated becomes a force that reshapes reality. That through patience, resilience, and relentless discipline, the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary, not suddenly, not dramatically, but inevitably. You no longer chase greatness. You live it. You breathe it. You demonstrate it. You have become the sum of countless ordinary choices, faithfully made, repeated, and refined. And in this truth, you find liberation, fulfillment, and power. Because the courage to be ordinary is not compromise. It is mastery. It is the path to enduring influence. It is the seed from which all extraordinary life grows. And you, having walked this path, having endured, having persisted, stand ready to see it bloom.